This is again. Welcome to the architectural site tour, Monday, March the 27th, 2023. Laura, would you like to roll?
Commissioner Chung? We saw you there, Kenny. Commissioner Chung, are you? Commissioner Sill?
Here.
Commissioner Wilson? Commissioner Chung?
Sorry, I think I just connected my audio. Are we doing roll call?
Yes,
I'm here.
great, thank you.
So before our normal agenda, I'm going to open the public comment section. Anyone who wants to speak about things that are not on our agenda can speak now. We will be monitoring the agenda.
So this is oral communications. If anybody has anything that's not on the agenda. Okay, I don't see any hands up. We are having a weird Zoom thing. Just a second. Jake, is this you?
Yes, it is.
Okay, for some reason you are logged in under my profile, so I can't be in the meeting twice.
Oh, let me
So I think
log
that's the
out.
problem.
1 second.
Okay, thanks. It's like magic. I'm here in so many ways. I'm always here, just sitting right here, or sometimes right there. Okay, so give us just a second on account of that. Jake's going to rejoin the meeting and then we can get started with the first item. So we already had oral communications on things that are not on the agenda.
So if nobody in the room wishes to speak, so I will close oral communications and we will wait for Jake. But in the meantime, if forward.
Only this mic is working tonight. This is never a dull moment.
Oh, if you, did you want to sit? Did you want to sit?
I can, really what Jake and I worked out was Jake was going to do his staff report. And if I needed to embellish anything, I was going to, but otherwise, what I would say to you is when we left the meeting last time, which we all had a clear understanding, you tasked me to go ahead and meet with Parks and Rec. And you asked me also to address an electrical issue with regard to lighting on our back corridor. Jake, when he does his presentation, will show you the cut sheet. We've already modified the one light that was brighter. There were too many bulbs in it. We've already modified that and provided Jake with that cut sheet to, and made those replacements already. We met with Parks and Rec. Patty will speak for herself, but we had a nice meeting with Patty, the gentleman who's running club soccer. Greg, our operator, was in attendance also. We talked about some scheduling improvements. We talked about some desire to identify more secured parking from time to time for soccer events. And then we both agreed, not we're going to take it anywhere tonight, but as we touched upon, we will be coming forward, making an application to provide a right-hand driveway consistent with fire department's request for what I refer to as an EVA. So we talked with Parks and Rec and with Club Soccer about what's the best way to make that circulation work, create a safe drop-off zone for the kids. That's a subsequent application. So we did the two things you asked me to do in the last 2 weeks.
Slightly out of order.
Fine, we're just solving our technical problems as we go.
So if Jake registers.
Jake, if you could go ahead with the presentation.
Oh, thank you. I'm sorry, Chair Wilson. I can't hear you quite. So if you were giving me the cue to go ahead, I can't quite hear you on my end. It may be just speaking closer to the microphone. but I
Right.
can go ahead and share my screen and get started with the presentation.
All right, thank you.
All right. Thank you, Chair, and hello, ASCC. My name is Jake Garcia. I am a consulting planner for the town. The item before you tonight is a continued item from the last regular ASCC meeting held on March 13th and is for a request for an architectural review, design review for an addition remodel to an existing restaurant, the Alpine Inn, located at 3915 Alpine Road. All right, first I'll start with a brief recap of the project. The applicant is proposing to demolish an existing 450 square foot kitchen addition that was previously added to the historic structure. That existing addition is substandard by current standards, so the applicant proposes to demolish the 450 square foot kitchen and outdoor bar to construct the 968 square foot kitchen addition in the same location. The project also proposes a new 102 square foot walk-in cooler and 106 square foot outdoor bathroom addition at the rear of the building. And all the areas of addition are shown on your screen in red. At the regular March 13th ASCC meeting, the ASCC received a staff report, heard presentations from staff and the applicant team. They heard public comment and discussed the application. The ASCC was generally supportive of the application for the proposed addition and remodel of the Alpine Inn, including its intent and design, as well as the proposed location and screening of the proposed transformer pad, given the property's constraints. The ASCC further discussed and advised the project applicant to revise its exterior lighting plan, parking management to be continued on to this meeting here today. So starting first with the exterior lighting, the ASCC was generally supportive of the exterior lighting, including the revisions made to the existing light fixtures to make them compliant with the town's municipal code and the newly proposed lighting associated with the addition and remodel. However, the ACC did advise the applicant to consider replacing the light fixture F, a non-compliant light fixture, with a light that is compliant with the town's municipal code for brightness. So that is the light fixture there being replaced. Since the last, in this where it's located on the site plan there with the 3 red dots. Since the last ASCC meeting, the applicant has provided an alternative light fixture shown on your screen. It's shielded and downlit, dark sky compliant, and is 791 lumens. This light fixture is compliant with the town's municipal code. And this was provided after the publication of the staff report and was sent to the ASCC prior to this meeting here today. Moving on to the shared parking plan, the town informed the ASCC that the town's Parks and Recreation Committee had expressed some preliminary concerns with parking and parking management of the parking lot shared by the Alpine Inn and the Rosati Field. At the last ASCC meeting, the applicant team provided a summary of parking conditions management to the ASCC. The ASCC further advised the applicant team to reach out to the Parks and Rec Committee to discuss parking concerns and work to identify any potential solutions for proposed areas areas of improvements for the shared parking lot between Alpine Inn and Rosati Field. So since the last ASCC meeting, the applicant team has met with the Parks and Recreation Committee Chair and the town staff Public Works Recreational Facilities Coordinator and agreed to some modest schedule modifications, and all parties agreed to keep the communication lines open. The applicant has provided a summary of this meeting included within the staff report, and the Parks and Rec Committee Chair has provided a summary of their concerns related to the shared parking. And this was provided to the ASCC after the publication of the staff report and before this meeting. I will now turn it over to the Planning and Building Director to provide additional context and explain revisions to the condition of approval number 6 that's included in attachment 1 of the staff report.
Thanks, Jake. So Howard Young, the Public Works Director, and I were talking about this afternoon and trying to think about the best way to continue to coordinate on the parking at this location without slowing down the current application so they can move forward with their construction. And so to the applicant team, this is revised language. You haven't seen this. This is just fresh off the presses. So I'll go over the concept and the details so that everyone is familiar with what we're proposing. So we're suggesting that we actually put down in writing at this point a parking management plan. We know that the applicant team has done a lot to manage parking there, but we want to make sure that we have a shared understanding of what that is. So we'd like you to submit a parking management plan. And this is just technical language that we always use to the satisfaction of my position as well as the Public Works Director. So that just means we go back and forth and kind of get everything written down. We want to include the current strategies that you're using to manage the parking demand. We know that you have a parking attendant. We'd like some more information about when that parking attendant is there and what their role includes. Their responsibilities, right? What they do out there. The number of spaces that you have dedicated for people using the town field right now. The approximate times that that's dedicated. So I know you have some method of doing that. So we want you to explain that method. And then also how you are physically identifying or portioning off those parking spaces. So we just want to get that down in writing so we all have the same shared information. Then we would like to do a series, we're thinking of probably like 3 meetings over time. So the first meeting would be with the Parks and Recreation Committee chair, so or their designee, and then the Public Works Director or his designee. And so we would have that first meeting prior to final inspection. We would have the opportunity to have a little time so you can be in construction and then talk about what's the parking management approach going to be when you're done with construction. So that's kind of during the construction timeframe would be that first meeting. And then we would have 2 check-ins on the status 6 months after the building permit is finalized and a year after the building permit is finalized. So we thought this was just a way to kind of memorialize the commitment that everyone has to continue on with the conversations there. And it's an evolving landscape because we do expect to be considering additional changes to the driveway in the future. We want to continue to monitor the use of the field. We have had some drop off in the use of the field, and we want to make sure that the public continues to enjoy that public benefit that we have for the community. So this is our proposed revised condition to try to bring all these pieces together so we have a better shared understanding of how we're going to work together. The business operators also have a lease with the town. And so that's something the town has talked to them sometimes in the past, and it would be worth revisiting that sometime in the future as well, especially as we look at the driveway and other variables that we're trying to work through. So this is our suggestion. My recommendation to the commission is that since the applicant hasn't seen this before, it would be good to get their response and see if they're in concurrence. And then we also have Patty here from the Parks and Rec committee, and we wanted to give her an opportunity to speak on this as well after the, usually we would take her as the first public comment. So you can incorporate that into your consideration. So that's what we've got for you in revise in terms of the parking situation itself. And then I'm guessing, Jake, are we done or do we have any final slides?
I have one final slide.
Great.
And thank you, Laura. The final slide is the public comments. Oh, excuse me. Oof. Public comment. Just like the last meeting, this meeting was adequately noticed. We provided a notice of public meeting to 1,000-foot radius of the project site, and we have not received any additional public comments since the publication of the staff report. And that is all. If you have any questions, staff is available, applicant team is available, as well as the Parks and Rec committee chair, who is available as well. Thank you.
So we move on to commission questions for Commissioner Phil, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Right, Commissioner Chung?
I don't have any. I'm interested to hear the applicant's response to what's being proposed that they haven't seen before.
Thank you. I do have a question. Will there be any extra questions parking management for the applicant?
I don't expect there to be a significant cost involved unless we ever reach the point that, more physical changes needed to be made, or we need to collaborate, or they need a more intensive parking management there. But for what we have outlined in this condition, I don't expect there to be significant expenses.
Thank you. So we move on to the applicant presentation, and would you like to add anything? All right.
I think we should go to, yeah, I think we should go to Patty. I think would be a good way to go. It's a little bit out of the normal order, but given their interest in this, I think that's a good option.
Okay, we'll go and go to Patty Booth then. Patty?
Patty, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Would you like
Was there
to
a specific question or it's very hard to hear you guys.
Right, we're just trying to work out if you would like to speak to any of to either the applicant or the planner with questions or opinions on what we've just been listening to.
Patty, can you not hear any of us? Or is it some better, some worse?
Laura, I can hear you, but I cannot hear the other person speaking. No.
Okay, pull it super close, Jim.
Right, Patty, we were just wondering whether you had any comments to add or questions for the applicant or our planner, Jake Garcia.
Oh, okay, thank you. I just have a few comments. First of all, we did meet with Deacon Eric. I want to say thank you for coming out on probably the rainiest day of the year. I appreciate that they were able to open the bar for us, although we did not serve anything. Just want to make that very clear. Everybody knows, I think, that my committee is primarily focused on ensuring that all these facilities are open and available for use when the public needs them, because they are public facilities, open to not only PB residents, but anyone else who wants to enjoy them. There's a lot of productive partnerships that need to go on to make these things happen. One is with our great Public Works Department, and the other one, in the case with Rosati's Field, is with the Alpine Inn. Now, I recognize the Alpine Inn is a for-profit business. I'm very happy that they're very successful. I love their fries, even though they go straight to my thighs. But you know, the more successful they are, the more challenging it is for the people who want to use Rosati's Field. And the comments that I have are probably nothing new to anybody on this call or in the audience. And that is that, you know, parents, coaches, referees, players continue to express their frustration regarding the parking issues. Alpine Inn has done and taken certain actions to help mitigate some of those, but it's still very, very crowded. Monday through Friday afternoons at practices when they start about 3 o'clock, and then all day Saturdays and Sundays when they have games, typically at 9, 11, 1, and 3. The AYSO and Alpine Strikers have offered to reduce their playing schedules. They've offered to take out the Friday practices, because obviously that's a big afternoon for Alpine Inn, and they've offered to take out the 1 o'clock games on the weekends because that's a crunch time too. I think that's commendable on their part. Personally, I hate to see them have to take that action because that takes away playing time on those fields, excuse me, for our kids and the public and the people who want to use those fields. So I think that's something that we can entertain, we can discuss going forward, but hopefully, you know, maybe not have to take that action, but open to it to make the partnership work. And again, from a partnership perspective, I just think keeping the conversation open, and I like what Laura and Jacob have kind of outlined here as kind of an ongoing tracking mechanism to talk about what are we doing, what's working, what are we hearing from the parents, players, and coaches. I do think dedicated spaces are an absolute must, particularly at crunch times. I do like the idea of a second exit. I think it needs to be worked through in terms of some safety and access issues and things like that. So I think the great thing is we're having the conversation. The great thing is it's open. The great thing is it's partnership. And the great thing hopefully is that both of us want the facility, which is a great facility, to be open to our public. So I think that's really all I had in terms of general comments. If you have specific questions, I'd be happy to entertain them.
All right, thank you, Patty. Commissioner Phil, do you have any questions?
No question.
Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions?
So do I understand correctly that you're in a way providing approval from the perspective of your commission for the language as it's currently being proposed?
Are you speaking to me, Patty?
Yes.
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 Yes, I mean, I don't think what they're doing to their kitchen has a lot to do with the parking issue. I think the parking issue is kind of
Sure.
ongoing. So I don't have any specific issues with what they are currently proposing. The downlights look fine to me. Just kidding.
So the parking plan terms that Laura is mentioning, I guess that's new to you right now as well then?
That would be new, but I'm open to it. I think it's a great plan. I think we should have some sort of plan in place for some ongoing and set communications about how things are going, some feedback loops, things like that. So I'm supportive of what Laura proposed. Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Kenny. I don't have any questions, so
I would go to the applicant at this point.
Again, applicant Decon on behalf of the Alpine Inn. If actually, Laura, if you could pull the language up, maybe we could focus on that. And we can start to work on better fries and all those other things. So two things jumped out at me. So I think the intent of having a traffic management plan, or maybe Jake, you can pull up that language.
Yes.
I apologize. I'm reading this on the fly with no glasses, which is probably a formula for disaster. But I would just make two comments. Fifth line from the bottom, fourth line from the bottom, confirm the parking management approach. I would like to insert the word confirm the reasonable parking management approach. Add the word reasonable. And the only other thing I want to say, I want to make sure that if we're all working together, this does not become a leverage point for whether or not my building permit gets signed off, because I'm shutting my kitchen down. I'm making things better, cleaner, healthier. And I don't want someone to go, I want 31 stalls or 29 stalls or purple stalls, which we agree with all those concepts, but I can't be held hostage if I'm working in good faith and we're all doing this together. I think it's great that we check in. I think for the whole world, the whole community, more check-ins is what we need on everything we're doing. We'd have a lot less conflicts around the country. So getting together 6 months, 12 months, fantastic. We'll put our, we'll put our plan together probably even before we, pull our building permit. But I just want to be clear if, this gets a lot of people involved and working on the driveway and we're working in good faith. I don't want someone to say, hey, I can't sign off on your building permit because I will have been closed at that point. So I can't inadvertently get myself predominantly closed. I might, I'll be 20% of what I normally am when I'm under construction. I just don't want this to become any sort of bargaining chip that I can't overcome it if somebody's not being reasonable.
right. I don't think that's the intent of the language.
Yeah, it's definitely not the intent. to
I
hold
know, but I was
reopening.
reading it on the fly. I just want to
But,
make sure it's
Yeah,
not a condition.
I think we could improve this language just a little bit to clarify that, and I think that would be in everybody's best
Right.
interest.
So if the motion tonight is to approve the project, subject to this language in which the director of planning and the applicant will go off to the side and wordsmith it. And if we don't agree, we'll be back in a few weeks, but that would be a condition that I could support.
How about if the planning director and public works and the applicant work on this language and then just email it or to commissioners to see if they approve of the language as well, so that it doesn't.
Well, we can't do that outside of a meeting because of the Brown Act. We
Right.
can have one of you look at it if you would like. But as long as everybody agrees on the intent of this language and the intent of the changes, I don't think it's a problem to do it administratively.
Yeah.
Because I think it's,
Okay.
And I don't
know, we can
either,
just do this
because
with
I'll
small
appeal my own approval. Right? If I can't get the language I want, I would just appeal the approval and put myself back into a public hearing environment. So
Right.
not too often do applicants appeal their own approval, but you know, we're getting older and who knows what we do. So I have no problem that this is 95% correct and we'll just wordsmith it
Yeah.
a smidge, just so I don't give our operator any heartburn any more than he gives me. And we can proceed.
I just wondered whether it would be easier if you had, say, a person on the ASCC rather than having to come back in front of the whole panel for public approval.
I think what I'm saying is I accept this language, but I would like you to instruct staff to work with applicant to put it in its final form. And we would only come back if we don't agree.
Okay.
okay, so I think we should go to public comment then.
Right, we're opening public comment on the Risotti's application.
Okay, we have a hand up from Dana. Dana, please go ahead.
Unmute. Hi, you guys. I haven't been following this terribly carefully, but just listening to the language tonight. I mean, having been on ASCC for 20 years, I think it's really important to move this project forward for their kitchen. And I really don't understand how there's any connection to the parking. I want to see that happen, but that feels like a different entity. So I would say, I hope to see an approval tonight on the construction moving forward. And maybe you open something up that's different regarding the parking. But I think the original application was for the kitchen. And I think it's very important to move that forward. They have weather constraints. They need to get this done before the summer comes when they get really, really busy. And I understand, I wrote to Jane to say, why wasn't this approved last meeting with 2 members of the ASCC just looking at the light fixtures? And she said it was a preliminary meeting. So I understand how we got to today, but I think it's very important to move this project forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Dana. Do we have any other public
I
comment?
don't see any other hands up. Last call. Does anyone in the room wish to speak under public comments? I do not see anybody else on Zoom.
Okay, so I'm going to bring it back for commission comments. Commissioner Sill, would you like to go first?
Sure. As I said last meeting, I think this is a great proposal. See that for light fixture that's quite a concern there. And I think that the proposal from Laura and on the parking is a good proposal. So I'm all in favor of moving forward. This looks like a great step forward for the Alpine Inn, and let's do it.
Right. All right, thank you. Commissioner Chung, are you all right to comment?
Yes, I agree with Al and Dana. I think I'm happy to, given what we've been shown tonight and the discussion, to approve this as proposed with the condition about the parking plan going back for ministerial approval, not requiring another meeting. I think that's fine as well. If I understood the proposal correctly.
You probably did. All right, thank you, Commissioner Chung. I too don't see any reason why that we can't have a motion for this project. I'm satisfied that with the new language of item 6, the applicant and the planning department and public works will work on this together, and that there's no reason to hold this up, obviously, but I don't think that was the intent of the additional language anyway. So I'm ready to entertain a motion for
Okay.
approval.
So I'll make a motion that we approve this project with the conditions outlined in the staff report, with the addition that condition 6 will be discussed between the planning director, the applicant, and the head of public works to come to an agreement. And the administrative approval won't come back to
Right, thank you. A second?
A second.
Right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We
Motion,
need to do a roll call now that Jenny's not here.
I think we're okay. Motion carries 3-0.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good night.
You go get some fries.
Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Laura. Thanks, Jacob.
Thank you.
Good night.
Right, so we move on to the second item on our agenda, which is the architectural and site development review of a new single-family residence with detached carport, hardscape improvements and landscape improvements at 501 Wayside Road. And Mr. Cook and Mr. Carter are in the audience, so if you would like to come up to the dais and then. Right. Oh, no, don't, all right, no,
No,
fine.
don't worry about it. It's fine.
Stay there then.
Yeah, because we have the situation with the mic, so
But if you didn't want to speak yet.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll move over to Jamie Bourne, who is presenting this application.
Thank you. Can you all hear me?
yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. And hello, good evening, everyone. My name, as you mentioned, is Jamie Bourne. I'm a consulting planner here to present a proposal for a design review and site development permit for a 1,654 square foot single family residence with an 85 square foot detached carport, hardscape improvements, and a spa, landscaping as well, and at 501 Wayside Road. Following my presentation, as you indicated, Carter War of CJW Architecture will be presenting a short presentation. The applicant request to construct a new main residence with detached carport requires ASCC consideration pursuant to section 18.64.010A1 of the Portola Valley Municipal Code, in which architectural and site plan review is required for applications for building permits for buildings or additions of 400 square feet or more, or 2 stories or more. Soil movement associated with the site development of the project includes approximately 45 cubic yards of cut and 350 cubic yards of fill. The plan set indicates 15 cubic yards of import, and which the applicant confirmed to be 15 cubic yards of base rock. The 1.59 acre property is located on a ridge line on Wayside Road and Horseshoe Drive with steep slopes and difficult geology. The currently vacant parcels located in ground movement potential category SLS and PD. The symbol PD on the movement potential map defines this area as lands which have significant potential for downslope ground movement, and symbol SLS is characterized by relatively stable ground. Soil type SLS is indicated on the site plan, which I'll show you next in the next slide, in white, and the soils type located in PD are in a grayer color, a little bit darker. All proposed development is located in soil type SLS. Easements on the parcel, I'm just gonna go to this next slide, include 2 pole line easements. One is located along a portion of the western property line, this area here. And that is to remain. And the second is located along the eastern property line perimeter that spans from Wayside Road to Horseshoe Drive. The pole line easement that spans that portion of the parcel is proposed to be undergrounded. The project proposal meets all the yard setbacks and uses setback averaging. Let me see. If here you can see the setbacks indicated. It's a bit difficult. One moment, let me get back to where I was at. So there, with the setback averaging, I totally lost where I was at here. Okay. As previously mentioned, the parcel abuts Wayside Road and Horseshoe Drive, and the homeowner elected to use Horseshoe Drive as the front property line. Pursuant to Portola Valley Municipal Code 1804350, in a case a parcel abuts on more than one street, the parcel owner may elect any street parcel line as the front parcel line, provided that such choice will not be injurious to adjacent properties. And the planning and building director, Laura Russell, concurred with this determination. Currently, the parcel is vacant land. The proposed main structure, as I mentioned, is 1,654 square feet. It is a single-story residence with 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. There is a laundry room, pantry, and great room concept that contains a living room, dining room, and kitchen. The main structure is accessed from Wayside Road by a set of stairs from either the 85 square foot detached carport containing trash enclosures and a small storage area, or from 2 uncovered guest spaces directly across from the proposed carport. There are 3 outdoor porches porch areas proposed, including one to the left of the front entry, a second off the great room, that also spans the perimeter of the primary bedroom, and a third porch that spans along the western perimeter of the main structure that contains an outdoor kitchen area with a gas barbecue, a fire pit, and a hot tub. The proposed maximum height of the residence is 20 feet 4 inches. The front elevation height from the beginning of the entry stairway in this slide indicates 19 feet and 9.5 inches. The proposed colors and materials for the exterior siding of the home are stucco in Cape May cobblestone with an LRB of 40. At the north elevation, stack veneer in tan and gray with mixed earth tones is located along the bottom of the front porch to the left of the front entry door, and one of the walls to the right of the front entry door as well. On the east and west elevations, most of the walls are covered in the stack stone, and on the south elevation, the walls beneath the porched area are covered in the same stone. A total of 22 windows and 4 sliding glass doors are proposed in Colby steel gray color trim. The proposed roof is a gable style and will contain a standing seam metal and Butler cool gray stone color with a solar reflective value index of 39. A covered porch on the west side of the main structure is proposed to be Class A asphalt shingles in color Wedgwood, that is an earth tone shingle. The applicant proposes 1,498 square feet of porches and stairs and 1,875 square feet for the driveway and 2 guest parking spaces. The total proposed impervious surface area is 3,397 square feet, which complies with the maximum allowable impervious surface area of 6,600 square feet. It is far below that amount. 2,500, well, sorry, now we're to landscaping. 2,544 square feet of landscape plantings are proposed, inclusive of the following shrubs: 16 2-gallon giant velvet roses, 16 5-gallon blue flame agave, 16 1-gallon emerald carpet manzanita, 83 1-gallon medium height manzanita, 83 1-gallon showy milkweed, and 83 1-gallon California buckwheat. 38 5-gallon toyon trees are also proposed. The Conservation Committee comments provided on November 15th, 2022 recommended consideration of a reduction in the amount of toyon proposed. All plantings are native besides the 16 giant velvet roses and 16 blue flame agave shrubs. There's no proposed landscaping in the soils type PD of the movement potential map, which has significant potential for downslope ground movement. Sorry, this is blurry. I tried my best. The maximum applied water allowance of annual applied water for the project proposal landscape area is 40,488 gallons per year, and estimated total water use is 25,749 gallons per year for landscaped areas. The estimated adjusted factor, ETAF, is 35%, which complies with the maximum ETAF for residential landscape areas, which must be below 55%. No new fencing is proposed as part of the project proposal. An existing 6-foot wood wire fence area is labeled on the existing site plan as a vegetable garden or goat area. And I am unclear whether that is to remain or, and the applicant can provide input after my presentation. According to the arborist report dated October 19th, 2018, the site contains 36 trees with 22 listed as significant and 14 as non-significant. The original applicant proposal was to remove 3 coast live oak trees. The Conservation Committee site visit with applicant Carter Were recommended removal of an additional coast live oak, number 4, and 1 bay, California bay, number 11, was also recommended for removal by the Conservation Committee in their November 16th, 2022 comment response letter. The applicant agreed to add the tree, not the 3, to the proposed removal as part of the project proposal. Of the 5 trees proposed for removal, 1 oak tree is indicated as significant on the arborist report. The Conservation Committee also recommended an updated arborist report, and a condition of approval was added to the planning staff by planning staff to review the updated arborist report with a Conservation Committee member at the time of building permit submittal and provide any necessary plan check comments to address identified outstanding issues. With respect to soil movement, that's associated with site development for the project, that includes approximately 45 cubic yards of cut and 350 cubic yards of fill. As previously mentioned, 15 cubic yards of base rock are also proposed to be imported. Import of 305 cubic yards of infill will require careful planning with properly sized loads in trucks on Wayside Road. The applicant also indicated the amount of import could be reduced as a cost-saving measure if the homeowner decides to move in that direction. And ASCC should discuss this matter with the applicant following this presentation. The proposed exterior lighting plan contains 7 outdoor wall sconces that are 500 lumens each and 4 recessed can lights that are located beneath the carport. Images of the fixtures are depicted on the lighting legend. 4 fixtures are located, as I mentioned, in the proposed carport, and the 7 outdoor sconces are located around the perimeter of the main residence. There's no landscape lighting proposed as part of the project proposal. Notice of the public meeting was mailed to all property owners within a 300 square foot radius on March 17th, 2023. The applicant also provided neighbor notification by meeting with neighbors in September of 2022. Staff received 1 response from neighboring property owner at 377 Wayside Road in support of the project, and no comments to neighbor notification letter besides that were received. Based on the scope, it appears that the findings in section 18.64050 review criteria 1 through 3 and 18.64060 1 through 9 can be made. Staff recommends that the ASCC review the plans and staff report, offer feedback or additional conditions of approval, and consider approval of the architectural review and site development permit subject to the recommended conditions contained in attachment 1. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Jamie. Right, commission questions. Commissioner Sill.
I did have one question on the lighting plan. Could you pop that back up?
Absolutely. Just one moment.
Question.
Let me get to. Yes.
We don't see the lighting.
Oh, just one moment. Maybe I'm not sharing my screen. Is it not?
It's not coming up here.
Okay, one moment. Okay. Can you see?
One of the guest rooms has an exterior door that doesn't have a light. Don't
Hmm.
all the exterior doors have to have a light next to them? Am I missing something?
Here, is this where you're just mentioning?
Yes and no, okay.
Yeah, I mean, the code says so, but, this is Carter Ward. Can you hear me? Through the chair, should I answer the question?
Yeah.
Yeah. If there is adequate lighting, in the judgment of the building official, a light fixture does not have to be there, if it's, has a common switching style. So,
Yeah, no, if you feel like you don't need it, I'm not used to seeing a door that goes outside that doesn't have a light. So that was my only question.
We're normally asking for less
I
lights,
know,
not
I
more.
know. That's why I thought it was a very strange question, but
Well, and in this kind of case where there's such minimal lighting, if the plan checkers came back and said there had to be a light there, then staff would approve that at this location. Because it's so minimal if the building code requires it.
right, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Carter. Thank you.
Thank you for that question.
Right. Do you have any more questions? All right. Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions, please?
Do I understand correctly that this has already been reviewed by the planning commission?
This has not been reviewed by the planning commission.
Okay, so it sounded like there were some planning related conditions.
I don't
So
think
this,
so.
sorry. Oh, okay. So and this is headed to the planning commission after that?
No,
No,
this
it's just us.
is before us for approval today.
I see. Okay. Okay. No more questions for Jamie. Thanks.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Chung. The only questions I have are really regarding some of the plantings. I noticed that conservation have suggested a reduction in the amount of planting, and I didn't know whether you considered any other varieties, or whether you're very wedded to the blue agave. Because most of the plants are natives. Although there's an excessive amount of plants, and normally what we would like to see is, am I echoing?
Sound good, Jane.
We normally say you plant less because then you give the plants space to grow into. So that's one of the things where I concur with the conservation, that maybe less toyons, because you've got lots of they grow very straggly. They're not the best.
We'd be happy to plant less plants.
Right. Okay. And then also, would you consider different varieties of milkweed? You've already got.
Yes.
Okay. Just so that you haven't got 83 of the same type.
Yes.
All right then. Thank you, Carter. All right. So we now hand over to the applicant presentation, and I assume that Mr. Waugh is going to be handling that.
Well, first I want to introduce, my client and good friend, Thomas Cook. He's new to our neighborhood. This is a house to replace the house that burned down, in the which complex?
SCU Lightning Complex over by Mount Hamilton. I'm not entirely new to Portola Valley. I just haven't been around a while. I spent some time here when I was at Stanford. A lot of it was at Zots, but also on the trails, running and biking and going up the mountains. I've always loved the area. It's a little closer to civilization than my own old property, which is better for me now. Looking forward to having a home.
So, I was excited to meet, Thomas, when he was, looking at properties. Because he, was keen on this one. This is a challenging property. It is 1.5 acres, but there's not much place to build very much. And I was pleased, that his building needs, were modest. And I think that, the street, the town, the site, is benefited by a much more modest, development on this site. It's about half what would be allowed, under the zoning ordinance. The stable geology, Jamie, if you could put the site plan up that has the geology, is really the constraining factor for just about everything. The house, the driveway, the drainage systems, and the on-site sewage disposal system, both the primary, and the secondary, have to be in that little white area, that I showed you on site. And thank you too, for making time to visit with us on site, because it really makes, an enormous difference, to help understand what we're trying to do. Yeah, it's coming. There.
Carter, is this the one you're asking for? I'm sorry.
That's the one. The darker color is hardly any darker, but
It's difficult to see, but you can see here this outlined area.
so that's perfect, Jamie, because, that outline is what constrains, everything. And so, it's a modest, 3-bedroom house, for Thomas and his kids to visit. And we're pleased with, kind of the rural rustic nature, of the architecture. There are some budget-driven things that are happening, in the world right now with inflation, and escalation in prices. So there's a couple things, that, I'd like an opportunity to have, a couple members, once you have 5, to look at, some elevations, later, as we make some adjustments, because there are some adjustments that we're going to need to make to reduce, the cost of the building. The terraces with the stone, stone structures, as I mentioned on the site, those have gotten pretty expensive. And the stone facing, has gotten pretty expensive. So it's going to be our intention to make, a couple of material changes. Where the stone, is on the building, We're probably going to change that to a vertical, hardy board siding, so that it's still ignition proof in a darker color, and that the terraces, would be, fireproof decks, rather than, the concrete structures that, it's currently designed. Because as we've been looking at budgets, we've got some, issues because, the project funding is principally from, insurance proceeds from the fire. So, but we're proud of, the modest nature of it, how it fits on the site. You only need to remove, 3 trees. There was a 4th tree that I pointed out to, those of you that visited the site. It's tree 4 that is, struggling, in between 2 good trees, and those other trees are going to be benefited from it. And then removing, the bay, number 11, is, you have no love loss, for that either. As far as the, planting is concerned, it really is, we're trying to make the landscape, really not lived in without screaming it in. So, as you recognize coming to the site, as you come up, to the site, you're kind of looking up at the house. And once you come, go above the site, you're kind of looking down on it. So we weren't, proposing trees that grow tall. We were really proposing, the toyon, to create a softening effect as you looked up the road and as you look down the road, to the house. Thomas has done a great job, getting to know his neighbors. He reached out to all of them and visited them personally. We think it fits in, it's, naturally, much more naturally than what would have been allowed, under the zoning ordinance, trying to get that 3,200 square foot house and all that septic system and all that stuff, was going to be near to impossible. So I hope for, a rational, quick approval tonight, and then leaving open, some options for some adjustments to the material choices, to help reduce the cost of the building that we would review, through the planning director and to 2 members of the ASCC, once you have a full complement of 5.
Thank you, Mr. Wall. All right, so commission questions for the applicant. So, all right, thank you. Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions?
My only question was going to be how they feel about a condition to follow the recommendation of the Conservation Committee. But it sounds like that has been answered, that's acceptable.
I couldn't really hear what you said.
He was following up on the Conservation Committee's recommendation, and the applicant has indicated that they would follow that.
Right. Right. Thank you,
Thank
Kenny. I don't have any further questions for the applicant. So we'll now move to public comment.
2 people that are watching on Zoom, the only members of the public that are here today are our council liaison and the applicant. So there's no other members of the public here. On Zoom, we have a hand up from Dana.
Go ahead, Dana.
Hi, I wasn't gonna come, I stayed on because I knew Carter was presenting. It looks like a great project. The only thing I heard in the beginning was it felt like the water requirements were pretty high for the kind of landscape that you're doing. But other than that, it looks like a great project. So anyway, good luck with it. Hi, Carter. Adios.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Dana. Right, so, do we have,
Shiny for them.
You can speak as a member of the public, yeah.
Is it possible to pass the microphone?
I don't think that Dr. Huffey was speaking to the public. I think she was generally speaking to the applicant personally. But if would you? Okay. Oh,
I was just welcoming him and mentioning that he could be participating in the 10 by 10 milkweed project that we're trying to do throughout the town to be able to have sustainable amounts of milkweed so that people are not just planting one straggly milkweed.
right. Thank
Gladly.
you, Dr. Huffey.
Thank you.
Right. Do we have any more public comments?
There are no more hands up on Zoom.
All right. I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion and their comments. Commissioner Sill.
All right. Okay. I think this is a great proposal for the piece of property that you've got. A lot of challenges, and I think it suits the site. I really like that you're doing this to a single-story house, and otherwise, I think it wouldn't. I think just lots of positives. I think the proposal in general for the landscaping is good. I do agree with conservation that it'd be good to see spacing a little different. It looks like the plants are just sort of thrown out there randomly, and I think it's a little more natural if they would group in a bit more, and if there's a little bit more variation from all the plants. So while I'm completely in favor of this, I would like it if one ASCC member got a chance to look at an updated landscape plan. Great that there's no turf. I think that the plant palette is pretty good. It's just to be a little broader. I like the way it's in close to the house. So, I mean, there's really lots and lots of positives. Materials and colors are good. I think that your idea of coming back later and dealing with one or two ASCC members, terrace and siding changes, that makes complete sense to me. I'm completely in favor of that. It's great that you're getting started and the tree removal all looks reasonable to me. There's no new fencing. We talked about lighting already, and there's no landscape lighting whatsoever. The staff analysis of findings and conformance design guidelines all make sense to me. You know, it's a great project. So it's very, very positive.
Thank you, Commissioner Sill. Commissioner Chung.
Thanks. I agree with Al again. I think the project looks like it fits the site fairly well. I'm inclined to recommend approval or to suggest approval with the conditions as mentioned, including Al's idea of having the landscaping plan come back with the incorporating the conservation committee's recommendations. And it sounds like the applicant is has other reasons as well to be a little bit more conservative on various aspects of the project. So that the landscaping will just become a part of that, those modifications. I'm okay with Carter's request to approve with a condition with in mind that there will be some changes to accommodate the pricing environment and so on, construction costs for two applicants to review. Yeah, I think that's it for me. Just to the applicant, Thomas, I'm sorry I'm not there to meet you in person. You will see plenty of at least our two boys up and down the street.
All right.
Eventually.
Forward to it.
But welcome to the neighborhood and good luck on the project.
Right. Thank you, Commissioner Chung. Like my fellow commissioners, I too very much like this project. I'm particularly appreciative of the fact that you haven't built out to the max, that you haven't done the maximum of the impervious surface, that you haven't got skylights, that you're almost 8 feet below the maximum height. I agree with the recommendations of conservation and note that you've agreed with all those and responded positively. But I would like to see a bit of a mix up in the milkweed, because having just one species, having 3 would be great, because the monarchs tend to prefer certain ones, but that in no way is to detract from the application. I like the colour board. As I said, that I like the fact you've got no skylights. I think you've done the best project that you can with that landscape, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it as a finished product. Well, not product, but home, but with obviously Carter's recommendation that if the materials board does need to change, it comes back to ASCC members for approval. I'm not sure whether or not the landscaping should be 2 or 1. 1, right.
I don't think that it's been pretty good already. I mean, we're talking relatively minor changes. Pretty much already agreed.
Yeah. I did see, I think I remember somebody being concerned about water, but if you're planting less plants, you'll need less water. And if we keep getting atmospheric rivers coming in, it could be even better. So I'm ready to entertain a motion for approval.
Prior to that, can I ask for 2 pieces of clarification?
Oh, right. Sorry, Jamie.
That's
Go ahead.
okay. First, one of the conditions is to review the landscape plan with a conservation committee member, and that is in attachment 1. I believe it's one of the first or the second condition. So I want to make sure that ASCC feels comfortable with that. And then second, with respect to materials, would the ASCC like 1 member, 2 members, or are you asking for a review by all ASCC members if material changes occur?
I
I
think
think
we
it'd be appropriate to have 2, like Carter said, after we get a
full quorum.
yeah.
Yeah.
I think those have the potential to be more impactful. So I think that two months.
And how about having the landscape plan in 1 ASCC member in conjunction with conservation? 1 member from conservation. Specifically, probably.
Yeah, I think that's fine. You know, I don't know if it can be done in conjunction, or I definitely think they should meet with conservation, get clarity with conservation, and I definitely think that any should review that or be involved.
Right. Okay.
I don't know if it has to happen at the same time.
No, not necessarily.
And one of the reasons we wanted to involve conservation is because they had asked for the updated arborist report. which we do think is a good idea. And then if anything comes out of that, we don't think there'll be any surprises. But it's nice sometimes to just put another set of eyes on it.
If I could, through the chair, arborist reports lately are really hard to get and have become quite expensive.
And constantly changing.
So if there's, you know, if the ASCC could see the way clear, you know, to avoid imposing another arborist report, it would save, you know, Thomas some money. And I'm not sure it provides much value.
That site, I didn't feel like there was a big need. I mean, it's not like there's super significant trees and we pretty much know what trees are gonna come down. I don't.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we have to have the arborist report if you don't think we have to. Are there any implications, Carter, for tree protection that we would need the arborist to weigh in on?
No.
Okay, so as long as we don't come to any conflicts when it comes to tree protection, then I would feel comfortable waiving that requirement.
I'm comfortable as well. Commissioner Chung, are you comfortable with that?
So the conflicts on tree protection, this is conflicts between the project plan and the conservation committee?
No, the conservation had requested a new arborist report, but the applicant has already completed one arborist report, and Commissioner Sill and I feel that a further arborist report wouldn't necessarily alter our view of the trees on the current site. So we're agreeing with, difficult with children. We're agreeing with Laura that possibly, and the applicant, that our second arborist report is probably not necessary in this instance because the trees aren't significant on the site that they're considering removing. Well, one is, but.
But that one's, there's no conflict over, potential conflict over. Right.
If you still wanted the other, I want to isolate it to the area that we're actually working in. Because it's a 1.5 acre site and for most of it, we're not doing any.
I think we're agreeing that we don't need a second arborist report. We don't want to put any extra financial burden on the applicant.
So the current condition of approval number 2 is to submit the updated arborist report. So then staff's suggestion would be to delete the current condition of approval number 2. And then we can add the conditions that the revised landscaping plan be reviewed by one member of ASCC. And we will consult with conservation. Staff will just do that. And then the second condition was that if they propose any material changes, exterior material changes, that be reviewed by 2 members of ASCC.
And we changed the tariff. I guess we kind of lumped together.
Yeah.
But Carter said that there's a good chance.
Great, thank you.
So basically not coming back to the full ASCC for anything else.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So have we got a motion in play at the moment?
Right, so I move that we approve the project with the updated conditions that we just worked through with.
Thank you. I need a second.
A second.
All right. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Chung?
Okay, motion carries 3-0.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Cook, Mr. Carter. Sorry, Mr. War. Welcome to the neighborhood.
I respond to everything.
And we may come up and pull more invasives at any time. Right, and I hope your leg gets better soon and your hip. And you.
Okay, thank you,
right.
Jamie.
Thank you. Have a good evening, everyone.
Right. Thank you. So now we're moving on to the third item on our agenda, which is the architectural review of an 8-foot tall rear yard fence application where a 6-foot tall fence is allowed at 235 Nathorst Avenue. And I understand it looks to me as though the applicants are on Zoom.
Yes, the applicants are on Zoom. They are out of the area. I am going to give the presentation on behalf of Dylan, who is not available for the meeting this evening.
Right, so thank you, Laura. We'll hand over to you for staff presentation.
Thanks. So this is 235 Nathorst, and this is before you. There's not very many fences that come to ASCC, so this is a reminder of this provision of the code. And so there's a separate fence section, and that's at 18.43.080. And it says that when there's a fence permit application where they can't meet the regulations, then the ASCC may grant relief from the fence regulations. So this is instead of applicants having to get a variance for a deviation from the fence regulations. And then it goes on to say that when the ASCC is making that determination, that they should ensure the proposed fence achieves the purpose and principles of this chapter set forth in 1843-010. And we're going to talk about that in just a minute. So that's why the application is before the Planning Commission instead of being either at a staff level or up to the Planning Commission. I'm sorry, it's in front of the ASCC instead of a variance in front of the Planning Commission. So this is the vicinity map. The location is shown here with the green star. It's behind Roberts Market. The zone is RE1A. The parcel size is 1.65 acres, relatively flat for our community at 5.7%. There's residential on both sides and across the street, and then commercial abutting the rear yard. This outlines the proposed location. So this is now the other direction is facing up. So this is the house at the bottom of the screen and the rear yard at the back. And so the yellow is showing the area of the proposed fencing. On the left-hand side, there's a 26-foot run and then across the back. And then on the right side, there's a 33-foot run. So that section across the back is 207 feet. And you can see the relationship to the yard here. This is the proposed design. It's a standard wood board privacy fence. Again, proposed at 8 feet tall, where 6 feet would normally be the maximum. The applicant has provided justification information, which they can speak to as well, but we wanted to give you different ways to think about this application and give you some thoughts for your analysis. So they've indicated that the adjoining properties also have similar fencing. They would like to install a vineyard in their rear yard and want to enclose that and protect it. They've also indicated that the commercial activities create noise and light issues for them. And they said that the fencing would integrate into the existing adjacent fencing, protect the vineyard and mitigate those issues. So we did look into the adjacent property fencing, and everyone will not be surprised to learn that there are fences in town that do not strictly comply with the municipal code. So 211 Nathorst has a fence permit for a 6-foot wire mesh fence, and that was, our records indicate, issued in 2008, so under the current fence regulations. We do not have a fence permit that we could find in our records for 285 Nathorst. So technically, those properties were subject to the town's fence ordinance, which was enacted in 2005. In regards to the vineyard installation, we don't have any exceptions in the fence regulation when it comes to growing of vegetables or grapes or other uses that people might have in their yard. So there's no special exception or exclusion for this. And so what our fence regulations do instead is say that if you move further in closer to the house and out of the required yard, then you can have the larger fences. And so this is what sometimes people have done with their deer fences and other materials to protect gardens or vineyard type uses. And so we interpret the fence regulations as it's important to use fencing sparingly and with respect to wildlife movement. So this is always where the judgment comes into play, because their goal for their property is to have the vineyard, which needs protection from wildlife movement. But at the same time, we have a goal to protect wildlife movement. So thus the kind of balancing of policy that's asked of the ASCC this evening. In regards to the adjacent commercial uses, Roberts Market is governed by a CUP, a conditional use permit, and they have hours of operation, delivery hours, kind of the typical things that you would expect to see. That's intended to mitigate some of those adverse impacts. Of course, there are still going to be adverse impacts on one of our more, intensive commercial uses in town. So again, balancing the different policy objectives. We regulate noise through the noise element of the general plan. So that's where the different specific noise regulations come from. We wanted to give you just a little bit of background. We have record of receiving 5 complaints in 2022 and 1 complaint in 2023. And those complaints were addressed by informal communications with the business operator. So as you know, this is our first course that we always go to folks first and try to talk with them and reach resolution, as opposed to having formal code enforcement issues. But this is, for us, a relatively high number of complaints that have been lodged during that time. We don't have a lot of sites that receive multiple complaints during a time period like this. So again, with the policy balancing. And then we wanted to give you some perspective on some of the distances so that you can kind of put this into your thinking. So there's a open space that separates the subject property from the adjacent commercial. So Dylan gave you a few measurements to kind of get a sense of how big that is. And so the applicant's residence is 360 linear feet away from the rear driveway of the market. And then it's 129 feet of that private open space area that separates the subject property from the adjacent commercial. So there's a diagram in your staff report that kind of outlines those things to help visualize it. We do understand that there was some vegetation clearing within that open space area. It may have opened up some of that shared visibility, so that we're guessing is one of the reasons why they may be wishing to make a change and feeling that impact of the commercial use a little bit more. And the Northwest Triangle area plan does indicate that that rear portion is designated as private open space, but that language is pretty soft language, the way that it's used in the Northwest Triangle plan. There's not a formal requirement, conservation easement, or any other kind of formal mechanism in place that regulates that. We did our customary public noticing within 300 feet of the site. We did not receive any public comments. So these are the findings for approval. So remember at the beginning, we said these are the ones that we're supposed to reference when we're making exceptions. So these are in the staff report, but they're kind of what you would expect. We want to have consideration for open space. We want to use fences sparingly to provide a sense of the shared scenic resources. We want to respect the movement of wildlife and protection of views. And then we want to be mindful of the materials that are used to blend in. So there are multiple ways to look at this project that we've tried to give you some perspective on. In this kind of case, it truly rests with the ASCC. The staff has not made a specific recommendation as to approval or denial. We do believe that it's truly within the policy balancing expectations of the ASCC. And so we just recommend that you review all of the materials, the applicant's presentation, and any public comment that we may receive. We have included draft conditions of approval, which are in an attachment if the ASCC wishes to approve the proposal. So that concludes my staff presentation. So I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Laura. Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions?
The first is whether the assumption would be correct that the town maintains responsibility for clearing vegetation for wildfire purposes in that open space. And the second is whether or not there's any reason to believe that this would have had any trouble getting the variance. Given the conditions. If it were to go to planning commission. Just trying to understand.
Could you
Yes.
repeat the first question again?
Oh, I was just asking if it's correct to think that the town maintains responsibility for clearing vegetation in that open space?
It's private open space, so the town would not have
Private open space.
been involved. It's all privately owned.
So who is responsible for doing that clearing? Do we know? Is it owned by the applicant?
That's my understanding, but I think the applicant can speak to that. I understand they may just be wishing to use their yard differently, so we can ask them to chime in on that when they speak in a moment.
Okay, thank you.
In terms of your second question, if they could get approval for a variance is a larger process that goes before the planning commission, and the findings are different for a variance. And the findings would require that there is something unique about their property compared to other properties that are in a similar situation and in the same zoning district that would allow them to have this unique characteristic or exception to the rules. And so my opinion is that the variance findings would actually be harder to make than these findings that are within the fence permit regulations. And I believe that that's intentional because the way that the town regulates fences, we want to regulate them based on this criteria that's in the fence ordinance. So I think that when they wrote the code, they did this on purpose so that these kinds of fences would be reviewed by ASCC that has more, general experience reviewing these kinds of conditions. So I think that was their intent.
Right. Is that, do you have any more questions, Kenny?
No, I think I understand the response. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions?
Am I right in thinking that if the applicant had requested a 6-foot fence rather than an 8-foot fence, it would just be approved? There would be no issue.
Yes, that's correct.
And the second question is, given that there are a couple of adjacent properties here that have fences that appear to be unapproved, what does the town do about something like that?
We only enforce those kinds of things if we get formal code enforcement complaints about them,
Okay.
which we have not received for those properties.
Okay, thank you.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Sill. One of my questions related to enforcement, as in if the neighbours weren't complying with their fence application, whether or not they needed to be reported to the enforcement officer. The town, do we still have our enforcement officer?
We have a code enforcement officer on a contract basis that works just a few hours a week and responds to formal complaints that we receive. We occasionally get comments from commissioners or council members also that they wish for us to follow up on, but otherwise we don't enforce code enforcement unless someone complains to us.
Right, okay, and I can't remember approving of any 8-foot fences anywhere in Portola Valley before, but I could be wrong.
I know one.
Do you?
Yeah. The separation between Alpine Hills Country Club and the property at the corner of the Franklin Road and there may also be an 8-foot fence at the Windmill School.
At the back.
Yeah, there may be, and
Very few.
yeah, some cities that have a lot more commercial residential interface have separate code requirements for fence heights in that case. And so we don't have a lot of places where we have that interface because of our limited commercial. But Al, you make a good point in that the two other locations where we do have an interface between a commercial use and residential, I think we do have larger fences.
I seem to remember that the neighbour at Alpine actually requested the taller fence, didn't they? Because of headlights and everything, lighting
I
going
can't
into
remember
the,
the,
I think so.
I
And
just
then,
remember that it's there.
and then windmill was more to stop the mountain lions jumping over the fence. And
That might have been to prevent the noise from moving the other direction.
not sure. I think they were also because they weren't they having goats or something. It's a by the by. All right then. All right. I think that's the questions I had. So we would now move over to the applicant presentation. So Mr. and Mrs. Ford.
Yes, hello. Again, our apologies that we couldn't be there in person. I guess just the bottom line is what I'll start with. We've lived in our house 30 years. And over the years, the Roberts parking lot has been expanded. And the foliage was recently, if you look at that picture, there is nothing there now. The Roberts people did apologize for that. They said the fire department made them take out all the trees and bushes. But the lights and the noise are basically in our backyard. And our yard slopes down such that a 6-foot fence really doesn't do much to block the light and the noise. So we are putting this fence on our property, not at the rear, but on it, and then attaching it to our neighbor's 2 fences. And we'd just like to proceed as soon as possible.
Yeah, our neighbors both have existing fences around their backyards. So we already have existing fences on the side of our backyard. It's just the back that's open. And the concern there again is more recently, in particular, the fire hazard, we removed a lot of stuff from our side because the fire hazard, and Roberts did the same on their side. So what used to be pretty well opaque coverage with trees and overgrown shrubs and such has disappeared. And we have now, they have a view directly into our yard, and we can see the back of the Roberts Market. So our property slopes down from our street in Athforest. The Roberts Market slopes down from Alpine Road. So if you put a 6-foot fence there, we still see right into the parking lot. And again, employees arriving early, parking their cars in the back. The headlights hit our bedroom, actually, even when they're getting there 5:30 in the morning. And when they lock their cars, the horns honk. So we're trying to just create a little more of a buffer between us and the commercial activity there to give us a little more privacy and keep the lights and the noise as limited as we can. We've talked to both our neighbors, the Allens and the Koblicks, and they're on board with this. They had built the existing fences between our houses. They both have fences in the backs of their properties. So for us, it's just because we're directly behind Roberts that we're asking for the additional 2 feet to give us a little more barrier for the activity that occurs over there. So otherwise, Roberts has been a pretty good neighbor over the years. The early morning semi-truck deliveries, I at one point had to ask the town to intervene because the drivers were coming in the middle of the night and parking with their refrigerators running, waiting for the deliveries in the morning. I actually had to go over there and wake a guy up once to say, hey, you can't do this. But anyway, they've since, I think, there's a lot of early morning activity, but and we used to have more of a barrier than we have now, but with the addition of an 8-foot fence, we think we'd have much better containment of that between them and us. So that's pretty much our story,
Yes.
I think.
And their garbage disposal is now also right up against our backyard too. So, that's kind of unsightly. So I think that's all if there's any questions.
All right, Commissioner Chung, do you have any questions of the applicant?
No, I got from that an understanding that the brush clearing and the open space was a combined responsibility between the applicant and and Roberts that was being taken seriously, which sounds good. So yeah, I don't have any further questions.
Right, thank you. Commissioner Sill, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions.
Right, my only question would be, have you spoken to Roberts about re-landscaping the area at the back of the property? Not obviously to include any fire hazardous plants, but to mitigate the situation with the view from your rear yard to the car parking area at the back of Roberts.
Yes, we've spoken to them on several occasions. We tried to get them to pay for half of the fence like we did for our neighbors, but they declined. So we're each going to put the appropriate plants on our side of the interface.
Right, okay. Right, thank you. All right, I will open the comments from anybody in the public.
We have 6 attendees on Zoom and just our council liaison in the council chambers. Does anyone on Zoom wish to provide public comments? I do not see any hands up.
For the record, we only have one attendee in the room, so I'm not sure that there is a comment coming. No. All right, I will close public comment and bring it back to the commission for discussion. Commissioner Chun.
What is the saying? Good fences make good neighbors. I think particularly in light of the fact that there's approved precedents in town between the commercial and residential interface for taller fences, and the fact that the applicants are taking responsibility for the wildfire risk and doing the brush clearing, the geometry, the topography of the site. I think it would be lovely to be able to see more of the vineyards around town, but I mean, I'm sympathetic to that not being at the cost of the people with the vineyards having to see the parking lot. I think the applicants will be self-motivated to do the vegetating sort of plantings, at least on their side, to make it look a little bit better than just a fence. I guess that we'll probably see some trees over the top of the fence by the applicant's responsibility, but you know, I guess we can't under this under an approval for this force Roberts to do anything particular, but I think it will turn out in a way that will be beneficial for both sides in the long run and acceptable to the community. And it's a unique enough situation in town that I don't think we're pushing precedent in that way. So I'm okay to approve this.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Chung. Commissioner Sill.
Yeah, my thinking is very similar to Kenny's. I really am not a fan of fences to begin with, and in general, I would not ever entertain the idea of going above a 6-foot fence. But this is a really unusual case, and I feel like their enjoyment of their home is really impacted by being next to Roberts. I don't feel good about that at all. So I'm in favor of approving this 8-foot fence, but making it very clear that it's because they're bordering Roberts. I don't find the vineyard argument compelling at all. And I don't think that if this was not next to Roberts, I would never agree to an 8-foot fence. And so the idea, I don't think this sets a precedent where the next person who comes along with a vineyard and says, gee, I need a high fence to protect my vines, I wouldn't approve it. And the fact that the neighbors have a high fence already, that also I don't find compelling. And I wouldn't accept that as a good argument if someone else came up with it. But I do find that the fact that they're bordering Roberts, they're doing a lot of clearing because of fire risk, and that's creating an open space that's impacting their ability to enjoy their property. I do find that very compelling. So from my point of view, I think that they have a good argument in that.
Right, thank you, Commissioner Sill. Unfortunately, I don't agree about the 8-foot fence at all. And going from the report from the town, yes, the applicants could have an 8-foot fence if they brought it back closer to their property. I would only approve a 6-foot fence on the lines that the current 8-foot fence is proposed. I believe that wildlife corridors are important. I don't believe that Robert should be let off the hook for mitigation of the view. I think that the fire clearance of the fire hazardous materials should have happened anyway. So I would stick with the 6-foot fence on the lines of the border, but I would say that the applicant should be able to build the 8-foot fence closer to their property, but obviously losing the land between the fence and the border of their property. I am sympathetic in a way, but not so much that I would allow an 8-foot fence at that site. So we now need to either discuss this further or attend a motion for approval, and I won't approve.
Be nice if we
So where would the 8-foot fence that you'd be okay with be? How far in?
I think it has to be further into the property. I'm not quite sure within the.
I believe so too, but I can check.
And that's still not to say that animals can't get trapped behind the 8-foot.
I guess I just would highlight that the fence actually is going to be farther up due to the drainage area, due to the heavy rains, have precluded being able to build the fence
Right on
the property line. So by definition, it will be closer to our house at this point because of that drainage area and the heavy rains.
You know how many feet in it's going to be?
It's important for us to know how many feet.
Yeah, we're actually looking at that with the fence contractors to see how far they have to move it up because of that drainage area behind us in order to have stable fence built. I think we're looking, well, I don't know what the exact number
Yeah,
is.
I'd hesitate to say that, but it's clearly much closer to our house than we originally had.
We envisioned
wanted.
it being on the property line, but it'll be
not.
set back because of the drainage area.
Yeah, the required rear yard is 20 feet, so that is correct.
So if it's going to be, I mean, if you just agree now to pull it in 20 feet, then you're good to go. You know, so if you're close to that, just agree and then it's okay.
I believe that is where it is when
We could live with
submitted.
that, I
Yeah.
think,
Yeah.
because we just want the fence to give us
Yeah.
some additional buffer. it doesn't really matter back there where it is, but we do have to be clear of the creek, and I think that will be
That is about 20.
as much as 20 feet or more.
We're leaving it to the fence expert,
Contractor,
but
yeah.
it
The only
is-
thing with the land sloping downwards, you put an 8-foot fence there. This, I'm just looking from the perspective, the 6-foot fence would do the same blocking motion if it's 20 foot up a slope. You see what I mean? But I'm not saying that I
20
would,
feet in, they can do it. We don't have.
yeah,
any
oh
say
no,
in
I
it.
know.
We don't have
But I
say
would
in it.
just try, from a perspective point of view, it wouldn't necessarily even need to be, but they can do it.
They can do it.
Yeah.
And they want it also for the vineyard, even though that's not
No.
compelling to us. But if they want an 8-foot fence and they put it 20 feet in, they can do it.
Right,
So
all right then,
why don't I make a motion then? We'll move on.
okay.
I move that we approve the applicant's request for an 8-foot fence, as long as it's at least 20 feet in from the back property line.
A second.
Right, all in favor? Aye.
I,
Okay, I just want to make sure we got it. So we have a motion, Commissioner Sill, second, Commissioner Chung, to approve an 8-foot fence, 20 feet, at least 20 feet in from the rear property line.
Yeah.
Okay. So we had 3 votes, so that's carries 3-0. Okay, we got it. Thank you.
And I do suggest that you contact Roberts again. With a view to mitigating and with a view to replanting natives, etc., if they've been pulling them all out. And I did notice from the photos that it looks like the ephemeral creek sort of burst its banks or flooded. So it's damaged quite a lot of the plants there. So hopefully they will be receptive to helping, allay some of the costs of replanting and encourage to do some planting on their side that does not include fire hazardous materials.
It's gonna be
No.
beyond the fence now. So
Well,
it's not
but
gonna
on the
impact fence.
on the Roberts side as well, we don't want them to plant
Well, we don't want to.
fire hazardous fuels.
Hopefully. this will keep them
Right.
back.
All right. Okay, well, thank you very much.
We can follow up with you, Celeste, if you want to reach out to me on next steps. Thank you.
thank you.
All right. So we're now moving on to the commission staff committee reports and recommendations. Commissioner Chung, I can hear you're there.
sorry.
So do you have any?
I thought I had hit mute. No, I didn't have any action since the last meeting outside of the meeting.
All right, that's fine. I just wanted to ask you first. While they and Commissioner Sill.
I have not been involved in since our last meeting, but I am in town now, so I can be involved. So.
All right, I am currently reviewing 241 Georgia Lane and I will complete that hopefully this evening and return it to I think it's town tomorrow. Right, so we now hand over to Laura for her staff report.
Okay, so for staff report, I think everybody knows that there's a big council meeting on Wednesday night related to the housing element. The materials are prepared for final approval of the housing element if the council wishes to approve it. So that's a major meeting. That's a special meeting on Wednesday night. Of course, we will have Zoom, but if people want to be 100% sure that they can hear everything, coming down into the schoolhouse is the safest way to go with these in-person meetings. Then we have a couple items coming up, kind of routine items for ASCC for the next couple meetings. Then we'll have one cancellation. I'll be out of town, and right now we don't really have any other coverage since we are short-staffed at the management level, as everyone knows. And then in terms of ASCC appointments, the council has been focused on, the town manager situation and some of those high-level things. And so is circling back now so we can get those interviews and appointments rescheduled. So that's back on the to-do list. So hopefully we'll have an update for everybody soon on that for council.
Right, because it is difficult operating only with 3 commissioners. And as people might be aware, one of our commissioners has had to attend remotely because of family circumstances. So when you've got 5 commissioners, a family situation can be dealt with because we would still have 4, but with only 3, it means that the staff's time has been wasted and the applicant's time has been wasted if we can't hold a meeting with the quorum. So it is quite important that these ASCC members are appointed as soon as possible.
I totally agree. I don't know if everyone is aware that our town clerk has also left employment of the town. And so we're trying to cover for those functions. This would normally be a town clerk function. So we're getting people plugged into those spaces so that we can move forward.
And on that, the commissioners have to hand in Form 700. So I just want to check with, I know that Commissioner Sill has handed his in. And Commissioner Chung, how are you doing with your Form 700 since we don't have a town clerk at the moment?
Thank you for the reminder.
That sounds like he hasn't turned it in yet. It's due very soon.
It's due sort of today-ish, but you can do it online, but you need to take a wet copy into the town offices, preferably as soon as possible.
I think I can, yeah, I think I can do it this week.
Okay, I'll just make that statement and leave it open-ended. Right. Sorry, was there anything?
No, that's it. We should take public comment though on this,
All right.
on the reports. Do any members of the public want to comment on the commission and staff report? There are no hands up.
All right, I'll bring it back to the dais then and move on to approval of minutes from the March the 13th meeting 2023. Commissioners Sill and Chung, do you have any?
They look fine to me.
They look
They
fine.
look fine to me as well.
All right,
I'll move that we approve the minutes as written.
I second.
all in favor?
I'm sorry, we just need to double check for public comments. So if you wish to comment on the minutes, please raise your hand. And I do not see any hands up. We have a motion and a second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion passes 3-0.
All right, and so the meeting is adjourned 7:57.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks. Have a good evening.
Yeah.